are watching the Huddle, by the way, with Ninja, producer Steve, and Odd Sharks college football analyst Josie Costigan. Let's look at the 4 round 1 games in the CFP. And I want to start Indiana and Notre Dame. Like you mentioned, we get the in-state rivalry on a Friday night with this one. Notre Dame comes in red hot. Ever since that NIU game, they've been really pretty dominant. 10-game win streak, 9-1 against the spread, 7-3 over-under record. The Indiana defense, though, pretty elite in your standard FBS ranking, 6th in opponent PPG, 2nd in opponent total yards per game, the best rush defense in terms of opponent rushing yards per game. The list goes on and on with this team. Indiana obviously had the big loss at Ohio State, but then a week later, they go out and they beat Purdue 66-0. And I know Purdue is a joke this season, but still a good response for this football team. Hoosiers 9-3 against the spread this season. I know, Josie, you're a Notre Dame fan, but break this one down far away from those gold-tinted glasses.
Oh, I've never had gold-tinted glasses with any of my teams. Jeez, I wish. You honestly kind of took everything out of my mouth. It's like it's 2 top 10 defenses going up against each other here. Riley Leonard and Jeremiah Love's ground attack going up against Curtis Rourke's passing game. I think the Irish are well-rounded, and like you said, I think they've established a lot of confidence following that Week 2 upset to Northern Illinois. They have the best scoring margin in the country. I think, plus 23 to 26, I forget. With these first-round games, you have to consider home field advantage, so playing in front of a touchdown Jesus is going to be a huge thing, even if it is just an interstate rivalry. Notre Dame at -7.5. Look, they've covered in 8 straight, and I think 6 of those were double what this spread is. So I'm not saying anything, but you can see where I'm getting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to agree. I like some underdogs in this first 4 games that we've got, but I think Notre Dame is the one, maybe 2 faves that I think win comfortably. Steve, any thoughts on this one?
Not really. I mean, the weather's going to be interesting in all these games now. I just want to see how Indiana comes out. I think, I hate the saying, and I hate stupid cliches where it's like, you're going to learn a lot about this team in the first half. I think with Indiana, you might learn a lot about them in the first half. But my one thing I have with Notre Dame, there's trust issues. They find ways to, like, they lost to Northern Illinois. They've lost to Marshall last year. They lost another dud game last year. They can figure out how to lose to lesser opponents. And that's the one thing I'm afraid of with Notre Dame. But having said that, if Notre Dame was like the 5 seed, I'd probably bet them to win the whole thing.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just...
I totally get what you mean, 100%.
Did you see them after when the camera went to them after they got like their CFP selection, and they were all just in like their white tracks, it's just like clapping like this. I'm like, oh shit, they're going all the way. Like nobody was even pumped. They were just like, yep, awesome.
Locked in, man. And that's the hallmark of a team that can go deep here. I do think it's a potentially favorable matchup for the Fighting Irish in round 1 of the CFP. Let's look at SMU Penn State. So Penn State 6-6 against the spread. SMU 8-4 against the spread this season. They almost pulled off an absolutely incredible comeback. We already talked about it against Clemson in that ACC championship game. They were down 24-7 at half, came up short, but what a response to a bad first half and an especially bad first quarter in that game. Penn State played a pretty strong Big Ten championship game, I will say, but ultimately did lose to Oregon. Of course, I just wonder about that whole James Franklin in a big game angle here. SMU does have to travel. Weather won't be great. They do bring that big play offense, though, high-scoring offense into this one. James Franklin has been the butt of many a joke, which you've already heard here today. But 1-14 against AP top 5 teams, and he's lost 11 straight. Now, I know SMU is not top 5, but still, it needs to be mentioned. Penn State 1-24 against AP top 5 opponents since the year 2000. So, thinking about Penn State, this is just the first hurdle if they do have national championship aspirations, which of course they do. But this SMU game is going to be tough, and it's a pressure-filled spot for James Franklin for this program. Josie, break this one down.
Yeah, I mean, we've already alluded to it. I think the biggest obstacle right now is James Franklin for me when it comes to betting on this game, just because, yeah, he, even falling to Ohio State and Oregon this year, and he's just had such shaky moments leading this team. And I don't think it's the team itself. Like Drew Allaire, like I think he has the experience. I just don't think they necessarily have the coaching behind him. But I also look at SMU's schedule, and there's nothing jumping out at me that warrants me that they're going to pull off this grand upset. I'd say the one thing is they have a really strong rush defense that's allowing less than 100 yards per game, and I think that's going to stifle, the Nick Singletons and the Katron Allens. This number opened at 7.5, already jumped to 8.5, so I'm kind of monitoring it right now, hoping that it maybe jumps up a little bit higher, because then I would take the underdog spread here.
Steve, I mean, you know a lot about this program. You know a lot about James Franklin, being a Michigan fan and whatnot. Like I said, I know it's not SMU is not your AP top 5 team, a tough opponent for sure. But coming from Texas to a cold Northeast, your thoughts here?
My thoughts are: what happens? Like, is Penn State going to do a whiteout? And what happens if it's actually snowing? Right, no, but seriously, these are some details you have to think of right now. If you're Penn State, you got to wear the blue jerseys for starters, right? Because if you try to do this whiteout, this could backfire, and that would be the most James Franklin thing that have happened to you. Like, shit, we tried, and look what happened here, right? I'll be cheering for SMU. I like SMU, and it sounds weird, but a lot of it goes back to the 30 for 30 and the Pony Express days. You know what I mean? So there's a little bit of nostalgia there, where it's like, okay, guys, you're kind of back. You're back. Good. You're here. You're relevant. Now, how would you go in here and become even more relevant and get a win? And then the chaos that does to the CFP bracket would be delightful as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. SMU brings a big play offense. They go for big yardage plays, fun to watch. Like Josie said, they do have the defense that might be able to stifle Singleton and the Penn State run game. So it is an interesting matchup, but another one where, I don't know. Josie's right, I think you keep an eye on the number. If it keeps trending the way that it goes, maybe play the dog. But as it sits right now, and even if it goes back to 7, kind of like Penn State in this spot. Let's go.
Could be a good live spot, though, man. This could be one of those good games, you don't have a feel for it right away. See how the teams kind of come out and how they play in the first quarter, maybe first half. And if Penn State get up 10-0 and SMU just look like they're going to be a dumpster fire, and even if it moves to 13.5, just hammer Penn State.
Calling it SMU is the most Canadian thing you could have done in that spot. Let's go to Tennessee, Ohio State.
The worst.
On paper, in my opinion, probably the best matchup of the first round. Ohio State, 7.5-point faves here. The loss to Michigan and the performance against Michigan looms large for me here. One of 2 losses on the season, the other being the 1-point road loss to Oregon. Buckeyes 6-6 against the spread this season. Tennessee also has a loss that looms pretty large. That's the Arkansas game, but the Vols were 7-5 against the spread this season. This is the lowest total of the 4 games at 47.5. So look, guys, the Ohio State defense is a beast, but part of me thinks that Nico Iamaleava is the kind of quarterback that could be a problem for this Buckeyes defense. Josie, thoughts on this one? Because to me, I like Tennessee against the spread. I might even sprinkle the money line here, but go.
Wow. I feel like I was so high on Tennessee to start the season, and then something as the season progressed, they just kind of took a back seat for me. I don't know why. But yeah, I think, like you said, luckily for Tennessee, we all know Ohio State is beatable at home now, and that's huge going into this game. And if Michigan could do it, well, yes, Dorothy's here. We have to wait for her to bark, and then we know we're on a good upset pick because she was right last week. But yeah, no, if Michigan can do it, why not? Why not the Bulls? You know what I mean? Michigan was an ass team this year. Like you said, it was a Buckeyes defense that really held them in that game versus Michigan. I think a lot of games this season. Tennessee, I would say Dylan Sampson's the one you got to watch out for. But again, that Ohio State defense, it's a one-dimensional offense in that sense. So maybe the Buckeyes can kind of slow that down. And as long as, Will Howard, that last game was the worst of his season by far. So I don't know how he's going to rebound from that. this is like the one game that I haven't thought of a bet for because I just don't. I don't know. This is the one game that's so iffy for me. Again, the worst game of a season. If he rebounds from it, it should be the Buckeyes game, but I don't know.
I like, the prototype, like the makeup of Iamaliava. They have the good receivers there as well. Steve, upset in the making here or what?
Upset alert.
Let's go.
Ohio State is on alert. Iamaliava is going to come in there with the boys. See, the thing is, you have the game to know how to beat Ohio State, right? And we talk about not trusting James Franklin. You don't want to trust Ryan Day with your money in this spot in the game that matters. You know what I mean? So there's some criticism, like some jokes have to go. Okay, so we can't just put it on James Franklin, just shame Penn State. Okay, I don't trust Ohio State in this spot. I don't. I think Will Howard kind of showed us a little bit how he's Will Howard, right? Like he's not Iamaliava. He doesn't have that A-level game that you may need. But again, cold weather game, right? Like that's the thing we're seeing with these bowl games now, with college football now, is these cold weather games we've never seen before. So how much are these going to impact the games, right? And I know some of these guys, sure, they're from cold weather places. They may have played high school football in the cold. I get it. It's different in the end of December than it is in November, early December. Right, but I'm on board with Tennessee. I think they're going to find a way to win because I think Ohio State could just get in their own way, and they're not going to have a good enough game plan to attack Tennessee to figure out how to win. And if you want to beat Ohio State, do what Michigan did: play big boy football and do what you can do. And Iamaliava is one of the most athletic guys there is, and if he scrambles around, makes a few plays, you don't think that's going to get in the head of Ohio State's defensive side? I like Tennessee on the money line.
He kind of has the Dylan Gabriel, ticks the Dylan Gabriel boxes and what he was able to do for Oregon to beat Ohio State. There's the similar vibe here, and that's why I'm kind of all in on Tennessee. We'll talk bigger arm for
bigger
sure.
Arm. But but that's a great comp. That's a great way to put it, man, because Gabriel was just surgical with them.
Yep. We're going to talk more Tennessee, trust me. But let's finish here. Clemson, Texas. Josie, you talk about Tennessee falling off your radar or whatever. I feel the same way about Texas. I feel the same way about Quinn Ewers. I can't believe how much this guy has fallen off, like sort of in my personal make-believe college football QB power rankings and draft radar. I don't know if this is the guy anymore, honestly. I just think Clemson, sneaky good football team. This one also for me, serious upset potential. Texas doesn't want this game. They have the record, but man, 10-point win over A&M, 10-point win at Arkansas, 3-point win over Vanderbilt. Klubnik playing very well for Clemson as well. Clemson, 11.5-point dog. Dabo Swinney in a playoff game. I don't know, Josie, kind of a spot that, again, I like the dog, but what do you say here?
I know, I'm so sad. I was so high on Quinn Ewers at the start of this season. I really thought he was going to be a Heisman finalist. I thought maybe he'd be the Heisman winner. And he had a great start to the season, but like always, that injury, that mid-season, late-season injury, and then he comes back, and to me, he just doesn't look the same. My gut instincts obviously says Texas should win, but yeah, I really don't like how shaky Ewers looked in that SEC championship game. 6 sacks, pair of interceptions, lots of passing attempts, but far from precise. And we saw that same narrative in last season's Sugar Bowl versus Washington too. Like, I think he had a 55% completion rate. Like, same thing. Is he like the James Franklin of players? Like, is he just not going to show up in these big moments? If that continues, like, I'd rather go for the point total for this game. It's set at 51.5 at FanDuel. Texas has hit the under in 4 straight. Clemson has cashed the under in 7 of their last 8. I just feel like this is more of the way to go.